Okay,
This
so
is Dr. Cristina Osswald.
yes,
Hello, good morning.
good morning, good
Welcome to the
afternoon.
conference. We are eager to listen to your presentation. You are from the Macau Polytechnic University and CIT-CEM. That's probably an institute in the Universidade do Porto, am I correct?
You are correct, Professor, yes.
And your topic is the Jesuits in Macau, Art and Devotion between Japan and Europe, 16th to 18th century. The floor, in a manner of speaking, is yours.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for making this possible, that I can speak from Macau. And actually, this is just a little bit of introduction. This is relatively new. You can share. You are not seeing my PowerPoint. Maybe now. Okay.
Not
now.
yet.
Now.
Okay, that's better. Now we see you and the PowerPoint.
Okay, better the PowerPoint. Okay, anyway, this is but a small part of the project I developed mainly in 2018 as a fellow of the Macau Ricci Institute. And it was about exactly about art and devotion, and Macau in the center of the circulation of art and devotion between Goa and Japan. Today, I will concentrate more on this link, Macau, Japan, and also in a way to Europe, because as you all know, it wouldn't go not without this link. Indeed, historiography has concentrated so far on Namban art, on Kirishitan art, whatever you, and devotion as a product of exchanges between Japan and Portugal, Spain. More recently, Felipe de Jesus, the first martyr of the 1997 episode of Nagasaki, and the Cuernavaca cycle, and as well as the production of such objects as biongo or feather paintings has enlarged the subject to encompass Latin America. Still, the central role played by Macau in the global interconnected circulation of art from and to Japan has not yet deserved due attention. To say it differently, Christian Namban or Kirishitan art and devotion, as well as all artistic activity referring to Japanese art, cannot be fully understood without taking the role of Macau into consideration. The Society of Jesus was the first Catholic order to enter Macau and Japan, of course, in the early modern period. Macau was the base for the Jesuits, or was the headquarters of the Jesuit province of Japan. As Christianity was moving out into the non-European world, Macau, as other major sites of European control in Asia, see for instance Goa or Malacca, to develop to become a Christian author acting as religious conductor and arbiters. Indeed, Christian sacred and also less sacred objects moved and circulated as vehicles for the globalizing influences of Christianity, reinforcing the idea of an interlinked and supranational community, also in terms of this global circulation of art, taste, and devotion. Departing from this assumption, in my paper, I shall present some preliminary considerations I would like to foster, to develop in the near future about the route Europe, Macau, Japan, other destination. And having this in mind, I shall in particular approach or deal with three aspects I consider of special relevance in this concern. Jesuit College of São Paulo, the Seminary of Painters, the subject of martyrdom, and the role of the procurators. The Jesuit visitor Alessandro Valignano conceived the College of St. Paul and the Church of the Annunciation, Mater Dei, primarily as a training center for Japanese seminarians for a Japanese mission. The first students who arrived in 1595 included already some Japanese students. Indeed, in particular, Chinese documents have the information that Japanese students began to arrive in greater numbers in Macau from that period on. They thereby initiated the vocation of this college as a center of cross-fertilization vocations, as illustrated by its magnificent facade, we shall return later, and its interior decorations, Japanese porcelains, embroideries made in India and Japan, Japanese and European silverware, sculptures and paintings, and religious furniture, lakeware. Antonio Cardin wrote in his Relazione della Cristianità del Giappone, or Relation of the Christianity of Japan, that Macau attributed his beginning to Francis Xavier. The real reason is nevertheless another. The persecutions in Japan also meant that the arm relic found today at like this, now the Church of the Seminary found its final resting place in Macau and not in Japan as initially intended. And the reason it happened, it was actually the persecutions. In 1621, imposing festivities celebrated his Francis Xavier beatification 2 years before. A procession in honor of St. Francis, the patron of this Portuguese colony, marked the Catholic agenda of Macau in mid-18th century, and to my knowledge, as far as the late 19th century. Certainly, persecutions in Japan were decisive in many aspects for Macau art and devotion, and Jesuits and Jesuit for Macau Jesuit art and devotion. Father Antonio Cardin, by then rector of St. Paul, probably praised Macau as the foster mother of martyrs. The Franciscan Marcelo de Rivadeneira reported in his chronicle that some Portuguese had taken the blood of the Japanese martyrs of Nagasaki in 1597 to Macau. He continued his report stating that this blood remained fluid and without emitting any bad smell during the whole trip. This seems naturally rather another anecdote, but the truth is that the first-hand reports of testimonies of Japanese martyria arrived first of all in Macau. Inquiries on martyrdom in Japan lasted in Macau for the most of the first half of the 17th century. A document at the Real Academia de la Historia, Madrid, refers to the procedures taken in Macau, firstly by Pedro Morejon and then Antonio Cardin in 1633 and 1634 for the beatification of further martyrs of Japan. This document contains the testimonies of many Portuguese born in Nagasaki and who had assisted to the martyrdom themselves and then escaped to Macau. As procurator of the province of Japan, Cardin took part in the general congregation in 1645 at which Vincenzo Carapa was chosen as Muccio Vitelleschi's successor, and he was, in fact, in simultaneous, a great defender of the Japanese cause, or the cause of the Japanese martyrs. Jesuits, Franciscans, all religious agents celebrated the arrival of the news concerning new martyrs with imposing ritual and celebrations, with a massive participation of the population, of the Macau population and visitors, albeit the prohibition by Pope Urban II concerning the public celebration of sanctity prior to their beatification and sainthood. Macau celebrated their physical death and heavenly triumph of life, not with mourning, but with the tolling of church bells and festivals that could take up to 21 days and were marked by impressive festivals, of luminaries and fireworks, torchlight processions, bullfights, among other forms of celebrations. As soon as 1597, that was the first collective martyrdom in Japan, first quality relics and relics of contact related to the Japanese martyrs were taken to Macau. Pedro Morejon, the rector of São Paulo for many years and promoter of the martyrs' beatification, prompted the transformation of this church into a kind of pantheon for figures related to the Japan mission. Actually, the bodily remains of the 3 Jesuits martyred in 1597 were probably translated to the Macau by the ship Saint Antonio. The ship is indeed represented in almost all paintings concerning this martyrdom, and which sailed back to Macau in the autumn of the same year. In 1614, the exiles from Japan brought more relics of Father Martyrs, lay people killed throughout Japan. Portuguese and other refugees may have also taken relics to Japan when escaping persecution. Over the course of the 17th century, Macau turned indeed from a periphery into a central repository of sainthood and devotion, and thereby also in iconographic and artistic terms. In 1630, the canons of Manila asked André Palmeiro, the Jesuit visitor in Asia, to offer them some relics which, like the remains of James Kizai, had been venerated in the College of Macau, or in the Church of the College of Macau. The relics of these martyrs, in fact, became highly sought after and valued objects, being particularly important in churches, chapels, and private collections. Among the few studied cases, as concerns private interest or private interest in their relics, reference must be made to the impressive collection of relics and books referring to the martyrs, and which the Duchess of Aveiro, Maria Guadalupe de Lencastre, acquired in the 17th century, and which, after her death, were donated to the society. More precisely to the Jesuit College in Marchena, and to the Convent of the Most Holy Conception in the same Spanish city. In his summary of his diverse voyages and apostolic missions, Father Alexander Rhodes expressed his astonishment with the church internal, namely his golden decoration and its rare paintings. Arguably, these paintings and further decoration of the internal of the college church were the work by Kiristan painters. The year 1614, when around 62 Jesuits and 53 Jocos fled, followed by the various waves of persecution, is certainly a fundamental momentum as concerns Japan, but also the early history of the Jesuits in Macau. In addition to the founder, Kola, Various of his students and fellows of the celebrated Scuola dei Pittori, or Seminary of the Painters, such as his students Manchu Tashika, Pedro Chisua, and Todeo, eventually moved to Macau, with many other religious and secular Christians from persecution. Diego Niva, another one, a student of Cola, learned the art of painting and the Rima and produced various paintings for St. Paul before moving to China. According to Father Ursula, the portrait of Francis Xavier at Culver City Museum, the image of Our Lady of Snows at the 26 Martyrs Museums, and the painting of Saint Michael Archangel. This I have some points. Slaying the Devil are especially impressive examples of the artistic efforts of the school. Along the same lines, Cesar Bulla-Nunes, author of a monograph on the Church of St. Paul, suggests that it was painted by Cola's pupil Jacob Niwa, Niu Yucheng. As Niwa was called to Macau to work for the Church of St. Paul around 2016, and that he returned again 6 years later for the same purpose. Manchu Tashiko, also called Manchu Utao, fulfilled Japanese churches with his multicultural painters, and he was also banished to Macau. Govin Alexander Bailey, indeed, attributed the large painting, the one here on the left, the large painting of the Archangel Michael defeating the dragon and dated after 1614 to either Manchu Tashiko or Peter Sichuan. The presence of Chinese and Japanese elements, Michael's helmet is decorated with motifs inspired by the Chinese lynching fungus, that is a Chinese medical mushrooms, while the dragon holds a samurai sword, suggests either one of these Japanese painters who had found refuge in Macau. The Japanese Leonardo Kimura, who was martyred in Nagasaki in 1618, was also a father painter and engraver. And we know that some crucifix, or at least one crucifix, was sent after 1597 to the Seminary of Painters in Nagasaki, and then Macau, and finally to Rome. One of the three paintings on the martyrs of Japan at the sacristy of Il Gesù is for sure a Kirishitan or a work. Stylistic aspects and iconographic aspects led scholars to predict the Japanese school of painting in Macau, but already in Macau, with a depiction of this painting in the 1630s. And probably a work by the Chinese-Japanese painter Giacomo Niwa. This relatively large painting 110 plus, and this relatively large painting, measuring 110 plus 220 centimeters, depicts 44 Jesuits who had been martyred in different ways in Japan, beginning with the first persecution in 1597. Boxer and other scholars point to the possibility that the celebrated biombos may have been, or some of the celebrated biombos may have been also produced in Macau by artists related to this seminary of painters. The close link between Jesuits in Macau and Japan, also in terms of art, date much previously to persecution. Giovanni Colla founded this Academy of Painting, also as in Nagasaki in 1519, but he had previously already painted an oil painting of a Salvator Mundi in Macau on his way to Japan. This subject was especially fruitful in China and both in China and Japan. Albeit the weakness of this attribution, it goes without mentioning the attribution of the facade of St. Paul, or the design of the facade of the church of St. Paul to the Jesuit father Carlos Spindler, burned at the stake in 1622. On what Japanese historiography calls the Jaina Daijunku, and I beg my pardon for not speaking Japanese, the great martyrdom of the Jaina. Some scholars indeed identify the face of a bearded man crowned with swords in the upper western corner at the start of the on the side of the facade, on the upper part of the facade, either with Carlos Spindler or Alessandro Valignano, who had founded this college. The intricate iconography of the facade certainly renders homage to the ongoing gruesome episodes of martyrdom in Japan. We can refer crosses or arrows piercing a crown, or the various instruments of the Passion, citing, for instance, the figure of the state of Jesus. Moreover, from documents, from coeval documents, we know about fine Japanese wood furniture lines that line the roof of the main chapels and of the side chapel on the extending transept of the church, of rooms provided with tatami, and also the conspicuously stylized chrysanthemum below the Immaculate might have, here other examples allowed to death, might remind or might be related to the persecution in Japan. Gonçalo Coceiro, in his monograph, also launches the curious interpretation that the boat, normally here on your left, that the boat normally interpreted as the church boat could also have a less religious meaning as the Nau do Trato or the Nau de Macau, given the participation of the Jesuits in the trade related to it. This last aspect is as interesting as it would mean that this facade would be a unique case of facade of a Catholic church transmitting a profane activity developed by religious men. Diplomacy, and this is my last point, implies global circulation of material such as artistic objects in the form of gift exchange. From the onset, Macau became a source for exotic goods, highly admired by local and foreign elites. In a letter to Claudio Acquaviva, Macau, dated from the 21st November 1588, Cardin mentions biombos made in China, probably in Macau, and also such objects as gold, silver, pearls, precious stones that were kept in the college. According to an 18th century report by João Alves, the procurator's lodgings was one of the greatest sins in São Paulo. The inventories of goods by the procurator Manuel Barreto, in 1616, permit us indeed to infer that such Japanese goods, such as the tamis, lacquerware, tables and pans, a variety of furniture, boxes in urushi, leptons, and small coffers in makie, were especially appreciated within missionaries' circles. The various sorts of procurators that were of the Society of Jesus were essential members of the especially distant provinces such as Japan. The procurators received, checked, kept, and distributed the goods of the mission. The procurator in Macau assured the annual sending of the silks and rest of products to Japan. The second procurator in Nagasaki managed the business locally. The procurator of Japan in Macau would moreover be an essential link between Japan and Europe, as his task included the acquisition of medals, Agnus Dei, rosaries, and small devotional pieces, which they could buy in bulk in European cities, if possible in Rome, and also books, reliquaries, religious paintings, prints, and other artworks which they sent or took with them to their home provinces. And to conclude, I hope I have given some materials to think about the role that Macau played in this world on the move, and the formation for the art and devotion that combine both Japanese, European, and other elements of various traditions. Many thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osswald. In the beginning, it was a bit hard to understand, but then the sound was raised. We could follow you better. Are there any questions or remarks, please, on this presentation, either online or here in the room? I don't know anything about other people listening in on via Zoom or maybe in the meantime, I can start with my own question. When the Jesuit society was dissolved in the 18th century, what happened with all their, with their property and all these relics and religious objects they had in their possession?
I hope now you can hear better. A part of them were sent to Lisbon. Documents were sent to Lisbon. Father Montaigne made a copy of these documents, and many relics were just distributed. And yes, and so there is not, unfortunately, there is not much left. And besides, as concerns São Paulo, it has lots of burns. The last was after the suppression, 1835. And so it was probably even worse, all these fires and all the checkered history of São Paulo itself, than the suppression, in the case of Macau, of course.
Thank you very much. Any other question, please? Or the people who are zooming in can put their question on chat, huh? Right? No questions? No? Okay. I see a hand raised there. Yeah. No, okay. Any other question in the room? No, if not, then we conclude this presentation. Thank you.